Don't we say this often?
We say this every day anymore.
We do.
I can't believe it, but yes, it is a busy day, and love that news about Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan coming home.
Yeah, big day for them. Pretty amazing when a prisoner swap like this happens. And
I just wonder who we're giving up.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And then why did they decide to do it? What was the linchpin to him, Putin deciding to make the swap?
I don't know, but I have a feeling that's why Gershkovich was imprisoned in the first place, is because there were a couple of prisoners that Russia wanted.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's obviously the Putin never does anything that doesn't a big benefit for him.
It has a purpose.
Right, it does. Thanks, Jamie, and I'll talk with you again tomorrow. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, let's talk about this for just a moment. Wall Street Journal reporter and a former and a veteran, both have been released. What's interesting about all of this, and I want you to hear the report. Let's start with the report. Let's get this out. I'm sure you've been hearing about it this morning with Karen Travers from ABC.
Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan now en route to the U.S. to be reunited with their families. Gershkovich was sentenced last month to 16 years in a penal colony after a 3-day secret trial. He's been detained since March 2023, charged with spying. The U.S. and the Wall Street Journal saying he committed no crimes. Whelan's been held for over 5.5 years, serving a 16-year prison sentence for espionage charges he and the U.S. deny.
So now while all of a sudden you have these secret trials, they get locked away, and then the questions start now. Why now? Is this political? What was the advantage for Putin? What was the exchange? But in the end, we should always fight. This should be one of the areas that is a nonpartisan conversation for all of us. Not bipartisan, nonpartisan. When Americans are taken anywhere in the world, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't negotiate with kidnappers. What we do is we make sure that they know that this can't happen. And we haven't done this. It's taken far too long. This has got to end. And we should show the world that we will not tolerate it. Now, this is a couple of different things. The arrest was unusual at the time for the American, the Marine Whelan.
Paul Whelan really, though, was the beginning of what has been a campaign of hostage-taking. I remember back in late 2018 when he was first arrested and accused of spying. There hadn't been an American arrested and accused of spying like that since the Cold War. And at the time, it was extremely unusual.
Yeah, and so when you deal with people like this, if they believe that they're going to get what they've set out to get, it's more likely for them to continue to do it. And I know the families don't want to hear this. Families would give them whatever they want. We just want our family member back. But in the public good, in the interest of public good, do we negotiate with people and do things like this? And so what we give up and what ends up happening with this remains to be seen. I'm sure we'll get more details. Everybody's watching as this swap happens, as we will see the Americans being released, and we'll keep you updated all day. All right, we are expecting the President of the United States to speak at any moment about the prisoner swap with Russia. As soon as the President takes the podium, we are going to go to that immediately, so please stand by for that. Interested to hear what the U.S. gave up in this prisoner swap. We've been told the president was going to be taking the podium any moment. This is a good time to discuss this topic while we're on it. There is a commission, a military commission. The Commission for National Defense Strategy says that America may not be ready for a large-scale war. The Iranians have declared an attack. They have ordered a direct attack on Israel after what happened in the recent days. And so this is a big concern. If we're not ready for a global war and we are supposed to be the world superpower, then what happens in the coming days? The Middle East conflict is escalating. The Israelis are out there saying, we are defending ourselves. All right. I guess the president is approaching the podium. Let's listen in.
Hello, everyone. Got everybody? Well, good afternoon. And this is a very good afternoon. A very good afternoon. Today we're bringing home Paul, Evan, Alsu, Vladimir. 3 American citizens and 1 American green card holder. All 4 have been imprisoned unjustly in Russia. Paul for nearly 6 years. Vladimir since 2022. Evan since March of 2023, and Alsu since October of 2023. Russian authorities arrested them, convicted them in show trials, and sentenced them to long prison terms with absolutely no legitimate reason whatsoever, none. Paul, a former Marine, was in Russia for a wedding. Evan, a journalist with a Russian in Russia, was in Russia, assigned by the Wall Street Journal. Alsu, also a journalist, was in Russia to see family. All three falsely accused of being spies. And Vladimir, who was a Russian citizen by birth and holds an American green card, is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and was a pallbearer at my friend John McCain's funeral with me. He spoke out against Putin's regime, and for that he was convicted of treason. And now, their brutal ordeal is over, and they're free. Moments ago, the families and I were able to speak to them on the telephone from the Oval Office. They're out of Russia. Earlier today, they were flown to Turkey, and soon they'll be wheels up on their way home to see their families. This is an incredible relief for all the family members gathered here. It's a relief to the friends and colleagues all across the country who've been praying for this day for a long time. The deal that made this possible was a feat of diplomacy and friendship. Friendship. Multiple countries helped get this done. They joined in difficult, complex negotiations at my request, and I personally thank them all again. And I've thanked them personally, and I'll thank them again. All told, Russia has released 16 prisoners. 8 Russians who are being held in the West will be sent home as well. These 16 prisoners from Russia that Russia has released include 4 Americans, 5 Germans, 7 Russian citizens who are political prisoners in their own country. One of those Russians runs a human rights organization, Memorial, which won a Nobel Prize in 2022. Putin threw him in prison for voicing opposition to the war in Ukraine. 4 others work with Alexei Navalny, political opposition leader who died in Russia prison this year. Now they can live safely abroad and continue their work of advocating for democracy if they so choose. This deal would not have been made possible without our allies. Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey, they all stepped up and they stood with us. They stood with us. And they made bold and brave decisions, released prisoners being held in their countries who are justifiably being held, and provided logistical support to get the Americans home. So for anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do. They matter. And today is a powerful example of why it's vital to have friends in this world. Friends you can trust, work with, and depend upon, especially on matters of great consequence and sensitivity like this. Our alliances make our people safer, and we began to see that again today. Let me say this. It says a lot about the United States that we work relentlessly to free Americans who are unjustly held around the world. It also says a lot about us that this deal includes the release of Russian political prisoners. They stood up for democracy and human rights. Their own leaders threw them in prison. The United States helped secure their release as well. That's who we are in the United States. We stand for freedom, for liberty, for justice, not only for our own people, but for others as well. And that's why all Americans can take pride in what we've achieved today. I want to thank everyone in my administration who helped make this happen. Our work did not start just on day one. It started before day one. During the transition, I instructed our national security team to dig into all the cases of hostages being wrongfully detained, which were inherently, well, we inherited them from the prior administration. I wanted to make sure we hit the ground running, and we did. As of today, my administration has brought home over 70 Americans who were wrongfully detained and held hostage abroad, many since before I took office. Additionally, I issued an executive order in 2022 authorizing penalties like sanctions and travel bans on those who hold Americans against their will. And my State Department has introduced new warnings for Americans about the risk of being wrongfully detained by a foreign government. Deals like this one come with tough calls, and there are never any guarantees. But there's nothing that matters more to me than protecting Americans at home and abroad. And so we'll continue to work for the release of all wrongfully detained Americans around the world. Let me end where I began, with Paul, Evan, and also Vladimir and their families. They never gave up hope. We can't imagine what they've been through, all of you. Matter of fact, this lady right here, I think, was living in the Oval Office with us for a while. All kidding aside, can't imagine their joy right now. They're home. Tomorrow's a big day. The 13th birthday of Miriam. Miriam, where are you? Come here. You all know we have a tradition in the Biden family. We sing happy birthday on any birthday. You ready? All of you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
All right, you've been listening to President Biden as he updates the nation on the prisoner swap. 3 Americans, 1 green card holder released as he said, being held for no legitimate reason in Russia. We, in turn, released 8 Russians that he said were legitimately detained around the world. He complimented our allies, said that these people were flown to Turkey initially, and they make their way back to the U.S., and they should be reunited with their families tomorrow. He said he has worked relentlessly as president to free Americans around the world. And a lot of those he inherited from the previous administration. So he talked about freedom, how they work relentlessly. There's going to be a lot more on this, on the identities of the people released and traded for in the coming hours and in the coming days.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.